So in what ways would you say that the new approach is better for spouses? And maybe to add, what are you hearing as women walk through it, as groups use it? What are the outcomes that you're seeing that is making this effective for women healing from betrayal?
Yeah, like I said, women come into group already knowing what they want because they've listened to 85 podcasts and webinars. And so even before I started this round of our new Betrayal and Beyond in August was when we launched our brand new workbooks. And I had about 4 leaders getting ready to start, including myself, because I wanted to be one of the first ones to go through it. And I was already getting emails from women like, well, is there going to be codependent stuff in there? Oh, I see that you're starting with this and I've looked into that and I don't want to talk about him. And so I had not really seen that before in the past. Like they know what they want to talk about. And so with this new resource, I've seen that it's just given them, like I said, that safe place where they can come and process what's happening to them. And because we've stretched the process out, what I've seen from being here for, over the women's groups for 8 years is that it's helping them to pick up all the loose threads along the way. We know that you have to circle back year after year, but when we went too fast into, okay, we're going to learn about the addict brain in chapter 2 or whatever. I always get the chapters confused in the old one. And then we're going to talk about family of origin things. What I experienced and was seeing is that if I felt, okay, John's doing something very addicty, then my old, critic would come back and say, well, you're being very controlling. You just need to let this be his recovery. And you need to take the plank out of your own eye before you take the speck out of your brother's, which is a verse we took out of the material. And so I would say, well, I'm controlling or I have my own addictive behaviors. But what I really needed to learn was that's not what we're talking about right here. Like I am still working on my own issues, or he even has the right to bring up some issues that I have. But that doesn't discredit me for saying, when you were up late last night and you looked at those things, it really hurt me. That's not me being controlling. That's me understanding what that does to my relationship. And so I feel like we just really slowed that down instead of seeing women take on too much. Like, I'm contributing to this, and this is why this is happening. We really need to let the betrayal and the addictive behaviors be what they are first, and then move into that family of origin thing. And so I think that's the biggest shift I've seen is it's letting women sit and like process and feel the weight of what happened in their marriage. Because, we say that, yes, maybe I attracted an addict spouse twice. And I did because of my family of origin, which I recognize that, I grew up with addicted parents. I grew up on my own. And so I ignored a lot of red flags with my addict spouses that now I wouldn't. And so I do think that family of origin work and trauma work, childhood trauma work is so important. But also, we have women who come in and their husbands didn't have this kind of issue before they went into marriage. It was they were in night school and they were in residency school, and the work and the flirty nurses and the lack of boundaries brought them into this situation that honestly was not there before marriage. And so sometimes the sin nature or curiosity or lack of good awareness brings them into a situation. And so to have a woman come in, which I've had, it was a very sad email. She said, I've worked multiple jobs. I've cared for our kids. I helped put my husband through med school, all the while he was having an affair with the nurse. And so to come into a group and be told, what are you doing to cause this? Or what did you contribute to this? Just feels like a punch to my gut. And I don't think this is for me. And so that was really hard for me to hear. And I don't see that with the new material at all.
Yeah. I remember when we were having some initial conversations, you said an illustration about someone breaking their foot and going into the hospital. And that for me helped me see this so much better. Could you explain that illustration really quick? I feel like that'd be helpful for people to hear.
Yeah. So the way that I think of betrayal trauma and the difference between the approaches that we take or that we took historically and now would be that, let's say a woman or a person goes into an emergency room and they have a broken foot and they weigh 400 pounds. And the ER docs say, you know what? Yes, your foot is broken, but you're really overweight. And so really you should leave and go work on that and come back, after you've lost 100 pounds or more, and then we can fix your foot. And it's like, that wouldn't benefit anyone because the crisis is not the weight that's been building over time, but the crisis is that their foot is broken and it's only going to get worse if they continue to walk on it and they weigh 400 pounds. And so we need to fix their foot right now, and then we'll work on everything else later. And so I think that was helpful even for me in this process to think of, what do they need right now? What do women need who are right after discovery or in this crisis thing? And also keeping in mind that when women are put in this situation, well, any partner who's experienced betrayal, you're put in a situation and you're in the middle of it. It's not the start of it. And that's the other thing, is that right now, in order for you to feel safe and get some kind of emotional awareness and stabilization, what do you need right now? And I think even like Ashley was saying, one of the bigger reasons for slowing down this process was to help women recognize, to, like Ashley said, sit in how they're feeling, put a word with that feeling, and then also be able to communicate that feeling in a way that is healthy and expresses her boundaries. You know what I mean? And so it's like all of those kind of things take time. And I think in slowing down this process, we're giving women, again, what they need up front to deal with the crisis that they're in, so that then it sets them up for what comes later.
Another way that I think the new approach is better is that the co-addict or the codependent model kind of assumes an addict that is still in the picture, that you could be codependent with someone, that there's a marriage they're working to restore or trying to rebuild. And that's just not a reality for all women who are in betrayal. And we've had many, many women come into groups that he's already gone. The marriage is already ended. This is maybe something in their past, whether recently or further back, or women who might still be married, but it is not reasonable or healthy to consider that with the state of the behavior or what's happening on the addict side, that it can make it. And so I think for those spouses that tried to go through the old betrayal and beyond, they were always kind of filtering it through the, that's not my case, or I'm not working on that with my husband because he's not here and I don't want him around and he shouldn't be. And in this approach, it's much more universal. That all women experiencing the pain of betrayal have some needs for recovery. And whether the marriage is in place or not, whether the addict is doing their work or not, whether the marriage is going to make it or not, this version of Betrayal and Beyond applies to the heart and mind and story of that woman. And I think that allows groups to gel much better, to come together around what they're experiencing and not what's happening in their marriage. And so I just see that as a huge benefit also for churches that don't have to say, well, your marriage isn't making it, so I don't know if you'll feel comfortable in this group. Now it's like, if you've been hurt and betrayed, this group is for you. And that's just an easier way to help women and churches understand the groups.
Going back to Heather's example, the broken leg, I know her and I, when we were trying to put our mind into how to write this material for, like, once we understood the magnitude of what betrayal trauma does to your body and your mind, and how many women come into my groups that have chronic illness and they've been living in this trauma, we had talked about it's like a rape victim. And so even with the broken leg analogy, or rape victim who may be prowling the nighttime streets or walking down, the strip where they shouldn't be wearing a miniskirt, but we're still focusing on the trauma. But then there's also the person that is like a super athlete and really healthy and does something and their leg breaks. So whether we have a woman coming in and there hasn't been codependent history, or there hasn't been issues that she's done to create this, it was literally her husband's sinful nature that did this, and temptation, or they have a history of being unhealthy and codependent. Either way, we want both of those women to feel comfortable in this group. And that's why we just isolated the focus to the trauma of betrayal, regardless of what your history or what led to this is. Because, like probably 4 or 5 years ago when John had a relapse, we had already been through the material. We had already used everything. We understood I was controlling and had abandonment issues. We had done all that work. And so when he relapsed again, I was like, this is not because my mom was never home. Like, this is this is your fault. And I think that's when I did the deep dive into learning more about betrayal trauma, because I was experiencing like, this is not because my dad was an addict. We've done all the work. We've been good for a few years. This is because you've allowed yourself to drop some boundaries and to slide back into old behaviors, because your brain can just pick those things back up again once you allow yourself to start edging and going back to those behaviors. And I just knew without a doubt, like, this is not because of my family of origin. This is all him. And so that's kind of also what spurred on, like, why? What is this? How do I get through this? But yeah.
I love how
So lots of reasons why we needed to update it.
I also love how casually Ashley just be like, everyone knows I'm codependent and controlling and blah, blah. Okay, so and I think too, just something off that, Ashley, that with this, the sequencing again is trying to set up a betrayed woman who's a betrayed partner to be in a place where she can reconcile with her husband and there can be healing in that relationship. And just understanding that the sequencing doesn't eliminate our focus on the marriage or our focus on, because this is one of the things our ministry does well, is hold that tension of, yes, you have been betrayed. Yes, you are going through this. Yes, we do have a heart for you. And at the exact same time, we do understand that your spouse's struggle has to do with trauma and woundedness and how his brain is messed up. And we also have a heart for him. And so holding that tension together is a challenge that we don't take lightly. And I think that we do pretty well.
But we embrace it.
We do. We absolutely do. But that's also part of why making this change was important, is the sequencing helps set up that restoration later much, much better.